Economic Development Team for the last 18 months has been heavily engaged in distributing many millions of pounds of COVID business grants. So the actual dealing with a restructure, a staffing organisational issue, has not been the top priority. Our priority has been getting money out to businesses that need it, but those proposals will come forward in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to make any comments? Then it has been moved and seconded, then we'll go to the vote. All in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? I take that as unanimous, thank you. Item 11, Vision Derbyshire, Phase 4 implementation. I'm going to bring in Mr Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, members, I acknowledge that this is quite a lengthy and detailed report. I certainly don't intend to go through all aspects of this in detail because members have previously had 3 reports on Vision Derbyshire, this being the 4th report in the space of 18 months. However, I will focus on the key aspects of this report in terms of information which members have not covered to date previously. So, effectively, this report brings members fully up to speed with the Vision Derbyshire project. Prior to this report being formulated, I did offer political group briefings to each of the 4 groups, and I've certainly delivered a number of those briefings already, so hopefully that has aided members in their understanding of Vision Derbyshire. So in terms of the report itself, Section 1 goes through the background and it talks through the different phases of Vision Derbyshire. Phase 1 being in the period which commenced in July 2019, and that was reported to Council in January of 2020. We then went into Phase 2, which was reported to Council in July of 2020, and at that point, that was where we were working on a proposition to government focused around key ambitions which have been identified through the Case for Change. Members will recall I then brought a report in October of 2020 which provided a further update on Vision Derbyshire, and that was very much in the context of the awaited devolution and local recovery white paper, which was long trailed by government but still hasn't actually been published. So we don't yet know what the focus of that will be, but the indications are that the focus has changed and it's now going to be more about levelling up rather than devolution, although devolution is expected to feature in part. So Phase 3 of Vision Derbyshire, which has been conducted in the period since members last had an update, is identified in Section 1.8 onwards. And it really does identify the work that has been taken through regular meetings of chief executives and leaders of all Derbyshire councils. As we've gone through this phase, different councils have made different decisions regarding their level of participation in Vision Derbyshire, but there is still an open invite for all councils to participate in the future, and that is very much reflected in the governance arrangements which are covered later in the report. So the current position that we are at, which is outlined at Section 2 of the report, is really identifying what's now needed to bring Vision Derbyshire more to life. An awful lot of discussion has taken place, an awful lot of work has taken place, particularly around the COVID recovery situation, and we are already seeing the benefits of working in partnership across the whole of Derbyshire, particularly on the business entrepreneurship and business support schemes which are currently in progress. However, there are many other elements to Vision Derbyshire. Members will see from the appendices the actual themes that have been identified in the various projects that are currently being worked through. They certainly reflect this council's corporate plan ambitions. They include aspects such as climate change, upon improving the economy, upon delivering better quality, better paid jobs, and also supporting some of our more vulnerable sections of society, particularly around the homelessness agenda. So I can go into more detail of those should members so wish. But the 2 key asks of the report this evening really are about delivery of Phase 4 and the extent of this council's involvement in Phase 4 of Vision Derbyshire. And members will see that the key proposals within the paper for this evening are the proposed creation of a Vision Derbyshire joint committee. And I do need to explain the context behind this, because whilst there have been regular meetings of leaders and chief executives in order to drive the project forward, refine ideas and formulate clear proposals, clearly that meeting doesn't have any formal decision-making authority. Every authority has to come through its own decision-making structures in order to seek agreement to actually participate. Hence the reason why the 3 previous reports that I brought before you have sought to keep you up to date. But moving forward, we clearly need a much more dynamic decision-making framework. We need to remove duplication on some of the existing partnership bodies that exist across the county, and we really need to have a framework which allows all authorities to speak with one voice, make decisions quickly, make decisions which reflect the ambitions of each individual authority, and in doing so, that's where the proposal for the Joint Committee has been derived. And James McLaughlin, our own officer, has been one of the lead officers in assisting with this particular project, and if members have any detailed questions around this construct, then James would be able to answer them for you. So the second key ask of members this evening is then to consider the level of our participation in a financial sense, because all of the work that's taken place in Vision Derbyshire to date has been done alongside other people's jobs, demands on their time, and we've also had support from PricewaterhouseCoopers in the early stages of Vision Derbyshire, but that support has now ended. That commission has been complete. So what is becoming increasingly apparent is that there are very many ambitions to work together collaboratively across Derbyshire to deliver better outcomes for our communities, efficiencies, economies in service delivery for each individual organisation, but it really does need a dedicated resource to drive that, because progress alongside dealing with the COVID situation has slowed. Whilst it's been very, very quick to date, it has slowed in recent months, and we need to pick up that pace if indeed we are in a position to respond to whatever the government does put on the Levelling Up and Devolution White Paper once that does see the light of day. So the proposal is that authorities do come together and collectively finance a dedicated team, and the details of that are outlined in section 6 of the report. The majority of the costs are basically to be met by district and borough councils, a split of 60% district and borough, 40% with the county council. But in terms of the financial impact, the county council are picking up the lion's share of that cost. Clearly, the cost for this particular district, should members support the proposal this evening, is dependent upon how many councils participate. So in the report, I have identified the worst case scenario, which would be just over £52,000. I think it's fair to say that to date, Derbyshire Dales has played a very active part in Vision Derbyshire, both through my own personal involvement, through the involvement of James McLaughlin, and through the involvement of Councillor Purdy as leader. We think that there are many benefits to be derived from working in a much more collaborative sense. Longer term, there are certainly efficiencies to be delivered which would benefit our council taxpayers, and hence the reason why the recommendations are outlined in the manner that they are in the report this evening, Chair. So I'm happy to take any questions on any matters of detail.
Thank you for that. Right, firstly, because this is so complex and there are quite a lot of recommendations that you are being asked to vote upon, I am splitting them and working with recommendations 1, 2 and 3 first. So denote the progress, the council considers the key actions, and that the council considers approval for Vision Derbyshire Phase 4 proposals that have been put in front of you. So we're going to take, if there's any questions on that particular part, I will take the questions for that. Do I find anybody wishing to speak on that bit? Councillor Slack.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Noting the progress, I just wondered how many other districts, boroughs and district councils have joined recently, because I believe there's Erywash is on the edge, and Amber Valley. How many is there now, Paul, as part of it?
Chair, one thing that I should have said at the outset actually is that this report is a report which all authorities are being asked to take through their decision-making structures. Because of the way that our council meeting has fallen, Derbyshire Dales is indeed the first council to consider this report in its format. It is based upon a template which has been agreed by all the leaders of the relevant authorities who've been participating to date. But I think it's fair to say, in direct response to your question, obviously, I can't answer for other councils, but I think it is very fair to say that councils are at different stages of their commitment and enthusiasm for Vision Derbyshire. Everybody can see the benefits, but there are different factors in play. And we will only have the answer to your question, Councillor Slack, once authorities have taken this report through their decision-making structures. But you're absolutely right. Some authorities at the present time are perhaps less committed. I wouldn't say they are not committed, but they are less committed than others.
Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe, did you have a question within this point?
I didn't as such, Chair, but a question has just occurred to me. So I'll ask the question and seize the opportunity. Phase 4 proposals. When I first read Vision Derbyshire's move forwards on this, it seemed to me at the time that the only two things that were arising were the establishment of 2 careers conventions, and they were going to be online, and I couldn't quite see where the direct benefits for that were coming. I'm now looking, and as you say, it is a complex report. However, I note that Phase 4 is linked to the high-level plan. I think I'm correct in that, Paul. But looking at the high-level plan, I really can't see much detail, as it were, on what the proposals are and where our money is going to go.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, happy to respond to that, Chair. Members will see that in the context of the plan outlined at Appendix A, there are various initiatives, and now the early starts initiatives, they're the ones which we are currently working up. Now, some of that is directly related to COVID recovery. So, for example, if you take the county-wide business startup and support programme, that has been driven through our economic development teams across the county. It's been delivered as a COVID relief effort, and dedicated resource has been put towards that. So work is taking place irrespective of Vision Derbyshire, but Vision Derbyshire is enabling a greater collaboration and impact to be achieved. If you take other themes such as the climate change agenda, every authority in Derbyshire now has a climate change strategy of some form. They might say subtly different things, but the ambition is to actually bring a lot of that work together and establish a county framework. So again, it's only by working in a Vision Derbyshire construct that you can actually deliver that type of initiative. I think it's very fair to say that what we are looking to do with these early starts is just to give a flavour for the potential of Vision Derbyshire. You know, some of it might not be as ambitious as we would hope to achieve in the future. That's absolutely right, but that comes back to resource. It is a little bit chicken and egg. We want to establish the concept, implement the concept with some of these early start programmes, and demonstrate the ability of Vision Derbyshire to deliver at a scale bigger, better, more efficient than we could do as individual authorities. So it is very much a taster. And I entirely accept the point that in due course there will be a need to come forward back to members with the details of the more ambitious programmes that inevitably will emerge.
I thank you very much for that reply, Paul, and I will make some comments later in debate, but I do appreciate this is a very ambitious programme, and there will be something of a trial period and a bedding in on this. And it may well be a case of one of those schemes, as it were, that we need just to try and taste. But I think members need to be very clear about it and ask some questions at this stage rather than going in blindly, as it were.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, first of all, on all the hard work that's been done by the Chief Executive and the leadership of the Council, and congratulations on being first. Question for Paul is professional opinion. One of the key players, or the key player in this, is going to be Derbyshire County Council. Are you in a position to give any sort of judgment on their level of commitment to Vision Derbyshire?
I can offer that view based on my personal experience, both as a member of the Chief Executive Steering Group for Vision Derbyshire, my participation in leading one of the themes around skills and employment, and also my participation with the leader of the council in the steering group meetings. And I can say, based on what I've witnessed personally, Derbyshire County Council are totally committed to Vision Derbyshire. And that goes from the leader of the County Council, who has made it very, very clear that Vision Derbyshire is his preferred option for working collaboratively together as we move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Well, thank you. Sorry, this is a boring technical question on the vote. You sort of put 1, 2 and 3 together, and I can see the sense of 1 and 2, they're both to note items. But 3, in 3, we are voting for this. We are actually voting to establish the new Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee, embedding new decision-making processes. How much are we actually voting now on this by including 3 in? I'm struggling to, if I could explain properly, how sort of 3 sort of differentiates itself from 4.
Well, the way I see it, it says on 3, Council considers approval Vision Derbyshire Phase 4 proposals and the forthcoming period as set out in the report. That's the phases that are there to look at. And I've chose it that way. I could have left them all as 1 and we vote on all the 9 at once. I'm giving you the opportunity to do it in bit by bit, of doing 1 to 3, 4 and 5 separately, 6 and 7, 8 and 9. So that is my reasoning upon this at this moment in time. So I'm giving everybody a fairer chance rather than being a full debate on 9 recommendations that some part of it might be contrary to what you feel. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Chair, my question was the same as Councillor Gamble's. I would point out that recommendation 6 is to approve proposals for the establishment of Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee to be put in place in September 21. And the 4th point, I think it's the 4th point, on the proposals for Phase 4 is establish the new Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee. So by approving recommendation 3, we automatically approve recommendation 6. And if that's the case, then I've got a lot of questions to ask about recommendation 6, which I don't think are relevant here. And I believe that you should take out the 3rd element of of Phase 4, because that's already in as a separate recommendation.
Chair, perhaps I can clarify. The points raised by Councillor Gamble and Councillor Hughes regarding what are you approving in recommendation 3 is intended to refer to the proposals which are outlined in paragraph 4.2 of the report. That's the Phase 4 delivery programme. The intention in the way the recommendations have been structured and the way that the Chair has outlined to take them is to effectively separate out the principle of the Council signing up to Phase 4, but then recommendations 4 and 5 are the financial elements of our participation and at what level, and then 6 and 7 is intended to deal with our membership or even the principle of this council agreeing to that joint committee, and if so, what the membership should be. That's the way it was intended. Perhaps that's not the way it's come across.
Microphone, please. Approval, Vision Derbyshire Phase 4 proposals. The heading on page 73, Phase 4 Vision Derbyshire proposals. Paragraph 3.1 has the bullet points which include establish the new Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee. Therefore, by agreeing to a recommendation 3, we automatically agree to recommendation 6, and that is not Phase 4, and Phase 3 does not, recommendation 3 does not refer to Phase 4 delivery programme. It refers to Phase 4 delivery proposals. Therefore, I think Councillor Gamble and my proposal that we exclude the third point under paragraph 3.1 should be taken.
If I can help members, the key issue in front of you are the recommendations. So if you discount the point, the bullet point that Councillor Hughes and Councillor Gamble have referred to, you will actively make a decision on recommendation 6 when you vote on that. So I think the point that's been made by Councillors Gamble and Councillor Hughes is probably valid. I don't think it does bind the council to it, but I think for the purposes of moving the debate on, it's acceptable to disregard that bullet point. So you actually make the decision when you consider recommendation 6.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, I found your presentation and discussion at our group meeting very, very helpful. Thank you for that. I think if I'm correct, you said to us that the funding for the programme team was for 1 year only. I think I'm correct there. We're approving a revenue budget for 1 year, and that the staff in the programme team would therefore be appointed on contracts for no longer than 1 year. If you're able to confirm that, that would be helpful, because it implies that if the programme were to continue, we would be asked to make continuing revenue contributions in subsequent years. And consequent on that, do you think it is realistic to appoint a programme team for a 1 year period without resorting to secondments from existing organisations, which would, in my opinion, would have the effect of simply using existing resources and paying for them in a different way, rather than bringing new resources into the partnership?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could take the second point first. That is actually the approach that we originally started with. Was there an opportunity to second officers from individual authorities to form a dedicated project team to drive this forward, in order to avoid the necessity to appoint separate officers? Basically, the ask went round all authorities, and pretty much everybody turned round and said that they were fully committed delivering their own programmes. And whilst the discussion then moved towards, well, actually a lot of the existing work that's undertaken in authorities very much reflects work that could and should take place in Vision Derbyshire in the future, there wasn't the potential capacity to deal with that secondment situation. So that's why we've ended up in the scenario that we have. And I think by utilising existing resources within authorities, that's where the whole project has stalled, because of the COVID situation. But generally, irrespective of COVID, resources are pretty much fully stretched, and certainly that is the case in our own authority. So if I wasn't as involved in Vision Derbyshire as I have been, I would certainly not be in a position to commit any of our resources to form a dedicated team, because that would have an adverse impact on what we want to achieve as a council. Turning to the first point, this financial request is for 1 year, and that is clarified in paragraph 6.2 of the report. In terms of the appointment of this team, it is envisaged that the County Council would be the employing authority. How they appoint to these positions, whether it is on a one-year contract or whether they effectively appoint for a longer period but at their own risk, is clearly something that they would determine. But our situation, this request before you this evening, is to consider the establishment for 1 year. That will give us the time to determine how successful it's been and actually whether the Council wants to continue participating at that level with that same involvement moving forward.
Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think this is a very complex issue, and I think it is important that we do split up these recommendations for voting. So I'm happy to move recommendations 1 to 3.
Does that find a seconder? Councillor Morley. Tony. Councillor Mr. Tony Morley. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Are you sure you don't want the bus?
Thank you, Chair. Second.
You're just second. You don't wish to make any more comments? Okay, thank you. Sorry? We will go to debate because it's been proposed and seconded on that. Yeah. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. If I can help members with this complex, and it is complex, we accept that, because there's all the Derbyshire authorities involved in it, except Derby City. And I'd like to take you back to the first meeting that was held at Junction 28 Hotel, which is a lifetime ago now, but I think it was 2019. And every leader and chief exec at that meeting signed up to Vision Derbyshire because we saw the vision. We saw the vision of joint working, the possibility of shared services, the possibility of reduced costs. Imagine us being in Vision Derbyshire and being in a much better position to deal with Serco rather than as we are on our own at the moment. And of course there are going to be some ups and downs, there's bound to be. And yes, there are about 3 councils that are not quite at the table yet. 2 of those have had a different change of administration. One has said they're very keen, but they've got the auditors in, and so they couldn't really give a definitive answer. All the rest of the Derbyshire authorities are watching us very closely this evening because we are the first authority to make a decision on this. And I would appeal to members to support this for this year. Take it to the next stage and see how it develops. It's not a huge cost. County Council are bearing the brunt of the cost. And I can confirm what Mr Wilson says. Derbyshire County Council, vis-a-vis Councillor Barry Lewis, is 100% committed. So I would ask members, in splitting these sections up, to please look at the overall picture. And that is that I would dearly wish that you let us go on this next journey, approve the monies, and hopefully one day we will cement a governance model, and the work that James has already done has been applauded in Vision Derbyshire by every leader and every chief exec, because he's produced an excellent governance model. So I think it's worth that we back that work and all the 2 years of work that's been done. And Paul's right, the working streams that we're working on, and I lead with Chief Executive Julian Townsend on climate policy and housing policy, and there's work streams on climate change, and there's work streams on regeneration. All of those work streams are beyond the capacity of present officers. I've got a meeting tomorrow with all the Derbyshire planners led by David Arnold, and the Chief Exec on that meeting is Julian Townsend. And it's only right that the leaders and the Chief Exec lead Vision Derbyshire. And so, please, whilst you're splitting these sections up, please embrace a Vision Derbyshire, and let's show the rest of the authorities in Derbyshire that we're prepared to not only lead the way, but show the way. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Purdy that it's important that we do actually consider the recommendations as a whole, even though they're split into parts, and I think a decision on recommendations 1, 2 and 3 to me determines that the same decision will be made on recommendation 4. Now, I've supported Vision Derbyshire to date, and I still do in principle. I support it on the basis that it can represent a more efficient and streamlined way of working, and that it was a way of working that was supported by all the Derbyshire authorities. I now find that the vision is still full of the latest buzzwords and phrases, but it's mutated into a work programme, not a way of working, supported by probably a minority of the authorities, that it needs additional staff to deliver it, and while talking about rationalisation of existing partnership arrangements, brings an additional layer of governance and bureaucracy. And we're being asked to financially support £300,000 worth of staff and other costs to deliver 2 projects worth £100,000. Yet the project still talks about delivering financial savings. In fact, it's actually delivering financial costs. I'm sure that if as a small authority you're invited to sit at a table alongside the big girls and boys, this looks very attractive. What I would prefer, Chair, is that next year to have a proposal that clearly shows us how and what savings will be achieved, how and which partnerships will be rationalised. I will then be the first to support the proposal. But at the moment, we have a proposal for more expenditure and more bureaucracy, which I'm not able to support. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Paul, do you want to come back on that or not?
Well, Chair, I think the points raised by Councillor O'Brien are entirely valid, and I think, in 12 months' time, when we do report on the implementation of Vision Derbyshire over this period, if indeed this proposal goes forward, that's exactly the type of report I would envisage bringing to members, because clearly, at the moment, this is consuming a lot of my time and other officers' time as well, and we would only want to do that if it benefits Derbyshire Dales District Council, and if it doesn't, then there's plenty of other things that we've got to get on with. So I have no issue at all with bringing a report in 12 months' time to quantify the benefits of the investment, should members approve it this evening, in order to better inform our participation in the future.
I'll move to Councillor Ratcliffe.
Mike? Yeah, I'd like to give you another response in debate, and I think we've entered a phase of general debate now, so if you'll allow me.
Yes.
This may be a personal response as much as it is a group response, as it were. I've had a number of meetings, as has my group, with Paul on this subject, and indeed we have debated it before in council. Paul is a very dedicated chief executive, very professional, very enthusiastic, and of course he's an officer of this council of long standing. So really, we should respect his professional integrity. But I find it very difficult to give this whole programme unreserved support. So to that end, I'll state now that I'm going to abstain from the whole recommendations, which in my mind is a form of tacit approval. So don't get me wrong, I'm not an outright objector to this. And I accept that in some respects it's a case of taste and see. It needs to be proven, as it were, and perhaps we need to go into the early stages. But we need to go in with our eyes open, of course, as I've said before, in the knowledge too that not every council, has been referred to, has accepted this. And some of the reasons perhaps are a little unclear. However, they may fall into this sort of category, that the councils feel that they can make progress on strategic issues by going it alone. I've recently been the recipient of an extremely good document produced by Bolsover District Council called Bolsover Vision. Really thoroughly recommended reading to you if you get a copy. Extremely well presented and very dynamic in its vision for that authority. Clearly, it's going to produce just yet another, even if it's slightly hidden, as it were, in the complexities, of bureaucracy that we're involved in. I wonder about, for instance, the authoritative decision-making powers of this council if they go into this. I note, for instance, the joint committee. I note too that we'll have representatives on that committee, and Paul, of course, will represent us at chief executive level. But although further reports will be presented to us, what powers will this council have to block expenditures that we feel are unjustified, or indeed, and one hopes we don't hit this position, we cannot afford, given the pressures from other areas. Now, on the benefits side, of course, there is that advantage of joint procurement. There's partnership working too, and my word, we're going to need some of that in the future. I won't mention specifics, but you know, having that closeness may well provide us with information and advice about how we're going to tackle some of the problems that undoubtedly are going to arise for this council in the next year to 2 years. So it's got advantages, I can see that. But in terms of producing positive, beneficial outcomes, I think we've still got to have the fruits of the pudding, as it were. We're still in the recipe making area, if you'll excuse a culinary metaphor. So I'm not going to object to this overall, but I'm only going to give it tacit approval, as I say, but by my vote. But I do wish you every success, Paul, and I know you will work hard for this council, as you always have, and I will try to support you as best as I can.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. Councillor Gamble.
We're there. Right. I'd like to ask. Can I ask some questions?
No, we're actually in debate on the first one.
It's just that because I asked a question about the motion thing, I didn't get. I mean, obviously now we've moved on to a thing where we're going to discuss this new Vision Joint Committee, and I've now missed the opportunity. Have I to ask any questions about that?
Sorry. We're not on the joint committee side yet, sorry.
Yes, we are. Establish the new Derbyshire Joint Committee embedding new decision-making process across participating councils. It's in the proposal. It's what we're about to vote on. So I'd like to ask some questions on it, please.
I'm on recommendations 1 to 3. So, okay, I did make it clear at the point. I let Paul do what he give the report to try and make it easier, in a sense, for what recommendations were there. And I can see there will be some things here that you will have issues over. And if I said, right, okay, we'll go to the vote and we'll have it all as one, you won't be able to have that say. Now, the choice is yours in that aspect of whether you want me to do it that way. I can take it off the table and we'll have the whole caboose back.
Chair, point of order. I think James McLaughlin said that we were excluding the point on the joint committee. Therefore, we're not voting on the joint committee at this stage. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, so is it just recommendation 1 and 2?
No, 1, 2 and 3, but without
1, 2 and 3 without the joint.
But without the bullet points about the Vision Derbyshire bit? About the joint committee?
If I can help, the advice I gave previously was that the decision around the joint committee would be considered under recommendation 6. So if you exclude that from the bullet points that were referred to in your earlier question, we're focusing purely on phase 4, excluding the joint committee at this point. We'll need a further proposal and seconder for further recommendations in the report.
Are we including still the established new Joint Division Derbyshire programme team? Are these the appointments that we're making? So in doing this vote, are we approving the appointments?
No.
No.
Oh.
No.
No.
You're solely dealing with recommendation 1, which is noting, recommendation 2, considering and noting the key actions, and recommendation 3, considers and approves Vision Derbyshire Phase 4 proposals, excluding reference to the joint committee, which you'll deal with under recommendation 6.
I'll save my comments and questions for that then, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you very much. Oh dear. Like Councillor O'Brien, I've supported Vision Derbyshire so far because of the manifest opportunities for cost saving and access to greater expertise from having a wider pool of talent to draw from. So I think broadly it's a great idea. Councillor O'Brien noted the potential bureaucracy that is being proposed here, and that concerns me. My own concerns come from the governance proposals, particularly the articles for the joint committee. And I'm not going to go into those now because I know we're going to debate that later. But I would say that in the absence of any change to those articles, I believe that they don't provide political accountability and don't allow for councillors of this district or any of the other districts or the county to hold the leadership of the as expressed in the joint committee to account. And therefore, because of that detail, I do not feel that it is, and particularly this goes for opposition councillors who really have no opportunity to influence what the lead group say, and therefore what the leader, who is most likely be the member of the joint committee, the opposition loses all opportunity to influence what happens at Vision Derbyshire. Therefore, for that reason, I believe that no opposition councillor worth their note can vote for this proposal until we sort out the joint committee and have alternative articles proposed for the joint committee. So I will be voting against this wholeheartedly because I believe it is undemocratic and lacks the opportunity for political accountability of the leadership. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you. having sort of looked at Vision Derbyshire as it's developed, it seems to be a real way that Derbyshire Dales and the other authorities can really punch above their weight. Not supporting it would appear to me to be an opportunity missed, and well missed. And that's why I think it's incumbent on us all to support it. The downsides with any agreement, with any authority, is twofold. First, you have to pay something for it, and secondly, you have to have some governance structure. And it's the fact you pay for it and the governance structure that actually means it progresses beyond a beyond a talking group, a talking shop. We've got the opportunity here to really make some change, and I will be supporting recommendations 1, 2 and 3. We'll deal with the rest as they come along.
Councillor Hobson.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say I wholeheartedly support this. The leader and the Chief Executive who've been at this from the very beginning are reflecting the views of the entire Council. What I'm really concerned about now is we're having arguments about what's 1 and what's 2 and what's 3, and we've got people waiting at the back who are waiting for the next item that we need to discuss. I'm not wanting to stifle debate, but I think discussing whether it's 1 and 2 we're voting for, it's just wasting time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Slack, you did notify to speak again, but I'm afraid you have actually spoke on this bit in debate. So I am going to now go to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Buttle, I do beg my pardon. Yeah, sorry, I do beg my pardon. Butler, please.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You wait your turn.
I never saw Neil.
I just wanted to say about the working in partnership stuff. I know quite a few of the members here know that I spent 15 years working for the National Park Authority in a partnership, and every year we had difficulty in attaining funding for our core team, and we secured funding of over 30 million pounds during the period that I worked there. And I think that you have to invest in that sort of partnership in order to get that sort of level of funding across. I completely agree with. I completely see Councillor Hughes's point, but I would urge people to take on board the point about working in partnership. We can achieve much greater things by working together.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Deficit as far as the opposition is concerned. I don't know, did you catch that? There's a democratic deficit as far as the opposition is concerned. But if we've got a reasonably wise leadership, they'll be able to see that, we will crash and burn if you don't listen to the whole group. If you don't listen to us all, if you don't take us all on board, if you don't take us with us, it will fall apart. So I am going to support it, and I think it's a great idea. I'm massively in favour of joined up working on climate change. I think it's the best way to move forward, and I will be supporting 1, 2 and 3.
Thank you. Right, with that, I am going to now move to the vote. It has been moved and second. Councillor Slack.
Why have I been stopped speaking? Why have I been banned from taking part in the debate?
You did take part in that first part of debate.
I've got a view, so if you don't want
Sorry,
me to
it was
express
probably
my
a question. I do beg your pardon. I've wrote it down under the question side and not the debate. Councillor Slack, you were quite well.
Yeah, thank you. Just coming back to, I'm 100% for partnership working. That's what I thought it was all about. Partnership working with each other like we have in IT at the moment, like we have in taxation. Partnership working makes us much stronger and much better to stand up to different forces, as we know at the moment. But the big problem is we're getting closer to forming another layer of government, another layer of local government. I mean, we've got the district council, borough council level. Now we will have a level in between, probably the county. the county level, and probably one in between. So I'm afraid that bureaucracy will overtake what we're really looking for. We're really looking for partnership working and making a strong working with other districts. That's Councillor Purdy's already mentioned that. That's what I'm looking for. But I'm not looking for making another layer of government and more bureaucracy and more expenditure in the long term. So that's my big fear about this. I'm reserving what I shall vote at the moment, but I do feel that there's this element that we will move towards another layer of government, and I'm not happy about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, I've been very on the fence with this one because I can see it going, if I'm being cynical, I can see it going one particular way. But I do like the idea of partnership working. And I noticed what Mr Wilson said earlier on about the corporate plan. And we shouldn't lose sight that a lot of the corporate plan issues and things that came forward were proffered up from the opposition side. And I think that it's very, very important that if we are supportive of this, we go with our strapline of one team, one council, one purpose. And that is very, very important to me. And that's where I want to see things going. We should all value each other and we should all be vigilant. But on this occasion, I think I will go with supporting it. But I do need just to keep an eye on it, if you know what I mean. Thank you.
Right. With that, I am definitely going to the vote. It has been proposed and seconded on item recommendations 1, 2 and 3. All in favour, please show. Against? 2. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it's 6. It's carried. Thank you. Due to looking at the time that is on the clock up there, my clock, it is now 7 minutes past 8. I did say we'd be looking into, so we have obviously got to finish this item. So I'm looking for a mover to extend this till we actually finish this full item, and we won't continue to anything else. Thank you. Councillor Hughes has moved it and Councillor Burford. Thank you. All in favour of that? Carried. It's carried. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going on to the item of item 11 still. No, is it 11? Yeah, Vision Derbyshire, but number 4 and 5 of the recommendations, that Council approves active partnership in Vision with the phase 4 associated costs of 52,300 and the support and approval for recommendation 4 for the 32,350 for 21-22. I would like to move into questions. Has anybody got any questions over that issue? Councillor Gamble.
Is this the opportunity now to ask some questions about the joint committee? Since we now, that's a central part of it, and we're now considering approving phase 4 and doing active participation, which I assume means a joint committee. What I'd just like to ask, the thing that concerns me, and I think it's been brought up by a few others, isn't it, about the whole sort of democracy of this and this whole level of bureaucracy that we're creating. And I'm just wondering, who will it be accountable to? And in the event that, it will affect other councils as well, but particularly obviously I'm concerned about our council. If we wanted to do something which Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee disagreed with, who would get the priority? Would the Joint Committee get to overrule what we wanted to do, or would we be able to do it still?
Point of order. We're talking, Councillor Gamble is talking about the Joint Committee, whereas actually we're talking about the financial aspects, which are 4 and 5. We're
brought the point.
Well, it's not the Joint Committee part of active participation in Vision Derbyshire then?
I would have assumed we're talking about recommendations 4 and 5.
Okay, can you explain to me then how we actively participate in Vision Derbyshire without taking part in the joint committee? If they're two completely unrelated items, what is the active participation that's separate to the joint committee?
Just a second, thank you. I'm taking some guidance.
Recommendations that are before you, in terms of 4 and 5, are purely a financial question for the council to consider, certainly in terms of recommendation 5. Active participation in Vision Derbyshire Phase 4, discounting what we discussed earlier in terms of removing the bullet point in relation to Phase 4 that talks about the joint committee. It's purely talking about the programme of work within Phase 4.
Should the wording really then saying financial participation rather than active? Active involves, you know, the activity.
I think we're getting stuck on semantics in terms of that.
But I'd like to be clear what we're voting on.
Well, you're not voting on the joint committee at the moment. That's very clear because we've discussed that.
But we're voting on active participation.
So active participation relates to the work streams under Phase 4 that are set out in the bullet points. That I can't remember which point in the report it is, but it's the point that we've now come back to 3 times.
We're voting on the Seize Innovation, Business Entrepreneur Scheme, Smart Town schemes, but none of those will go through the joint committee then?
The joint committee is dealt with under recommendations 6.
No, I'm talking about how we actually seize, well, this is a bullet. We seize innovation. We seize innovation by business entrepreneur scheme. That won't go through the joint committee then?
Well, at the moment, no functions have been allocated to the joint committee. You're only being asked to establish a joint committee and appoint a member to it. When we get into the discussion on functions and responsibilities, I'll talk about the fact that actually there are no functions and responsibilities, and the appendices set out the types of things that might happen. None of them are function specific in terms of what traditional local government functions are. This is what I could waffle on about this for some time, and I'm conscious of time, so I won't. But we're not dealing with that point at the moment. I think is the issue is you're dealing with the work streams rather than the question of governance.
Have you got a question as regards the finance side of 4 and 5, Councillor Gamble?
Okay, right, on finance then, please can I ask, obviously we've been asked to put some finance into this. Originally, a lot of the, as Councillor O'Brien has talked about, a lot of the conversation around this has been around savings. So what concrete is likely to happen to actually offset what we're about to spend on staff? Because obviously, for it to be a rationalisation, presumably that will happen. You have plans for that?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I'm happy to respond to that question. The issue of Vision Derbyshire is not just about savings. It's about delivering improved outcomes for the communities that collectively we serve across the whole of the county. Inevitably, the greater partnership working that you have and the more developed those relationships become, that does offer up opportunities for savings, and in the longer term, Vision Derbyshire is estimated to deliver significant savings across all authorities if these proposals develop and mature. So in year 1, I would not expect or anticipate any significant organisational savings for Derbyshire Dales or any other authority. It's about testing the relationship, piloting some of these ideas and concepts to see whether they are worth investing in further in terms of time and resource, and then taking them forward in the future into other areas. But you certainly wouldn't, within year 1, expect wholesale rationalisation of shared service delivery, for example. That is a much more mature discussion that would need to take place in the future. This is about picking a number of themes with identified quick wins just to test the concept.
Can I ask, when you say rationalisation, does that mean you envisage that overall Vision Derbyshire will have fewer employees?
As part of the case for change, some of the savings did come from reduced number of employees, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to ask Mr. Wilson a supplementary on that. The ICT Committee publishes a report which shows putative savings, I think, in terms of joint ICT functioning. And do we do that with finance as well? I'm not sure. But could I ask Mr. Wilson whether this will happen with with Vision Derbyshire as well, that the putative savings, well, there is an understanding where savings may happen. Would it be possible each year to report on the savings that have been achieved over doing it individually?
Through you, Chair, if you've understood the point correctly, Councillor Hughes is absolutely right that, as members are aware, at the moment we have a number of shared service partnerships across Derbyshire. So, for example, our Revenues and Benefits Service is delivered in partnership with Chesterfield Borough Council. Our Audit Service is delivered in partnership with Chesterfield North East and Bolsover Council. What Vision Derbyshire is looking to do is effectively take that one stage further. So instead of having individual partnerships of only 2 or 3 authorities, why not deliver it across 8? And if we take, the most significant shared service that we could deliver across the whole of Derbyshire is waste collection and disposal. That would be the ultimate service saving that could be delivered for everybody, and it would deliver consistency across all of Derbyshire authorities, but that is a huge change programme. But taken to its literal extent, there's no reason why Vision Derbyshire could not mature to that sort of level and scale of saving. But we're obviously starting, it's baby steps, and I entirely accept, I am asking members to take a bit of a leap of faith. I am. But I do see the benefits of it. I think it's worth testing for 12 months and let's see how far it can go. If it doesn't work, we don't need to participate after that. But I think it is worth the investment to test it for that 12 months.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I want to come back to this point again because the report is very clear and explicit in talking about financial savings as a result of Phase 4 and the rationalisation of partnerships. Is it intended that the £300,000 being spent on this programme team is going to look at the potential for these savings and rationalisation of partnerships, or is that aspect of it, that key aspect of it, the savings and the rationalisation, is that going to be deferred until a later period? And if so, when can you tell us that we'll receive some detail on that?
Well, obviously the detailed work programme for this team hasn't been established yet, but the expectation is that once the team, if approved and appointed, would be able to identify the scale of opportunity. And as part of that scale of opportunity, effectively, in order to convince councils to perhaps move into a year 2 support of the project team or the Vision Derbyshire project in its entirety, it would have to demonstrate what the benefits of that investment are. So that might well be in terms of improved service delivery. It might be reductions in some of the bureaucracy that clearly does exist at the moment. It will be part of their wider brief, and I would expect to come back to you in 12 months' time if there is a similar request on the table for this council to participate, to be able to quantify that for you, wherever that may arise.
Councillor Allison. Question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Am I on? I think so, I am. I fully understand that we're the first authority to have this report and sort of like approve this committee going forward and the expenditure. I suppose what I want to understand is, have there been any timeframes put in place for the other authorities to sign up to it? How long are we going to wait for them to make that commitment and for us to then take forward the expenditure, up to the maximum of 52,000? Also, once that's done, when do you anticipate year 1 is going to start? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The steering group anticipate that given the current timetable for the various council and decision-making meetings, that this report should go through all councils by September. So by September time, there should be a clear view emerged as to who's in and who's out, and at that point, the decision would then be taken to appoint the project team based upon the number of active participants. I would anticipate that given recruitment timescales and the like, you're probably looking to have a project team in place, I would guess, by the new year, 2022. Sorry, I didn't catch that, Councillor Allison.
I don't think I'm on, am I on? Is that when year one will start then?
I would anticipate that would be year one start, yes.
And do you think you're actually going to be able to recruit people on the kind of salaries that you've put in this report?
Well, that's always a difficult issue. It obviously depends on market conditions, but considerable thought has been given to the level that these jobs are pitched at, and the view of the steering group is that they should be attractive.
Councillor Donnelly. Have you got... Oh, Councillor Morley, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Is the Chief Executive aware of the very old piece of business wisdom which applies from the smallest start-up working from a pace table to the busiest dragon's den that you have to speculate to accumulate? Thank you.
That's more of a comment rather than a question, I take.
Is he aware?
Right,
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, have we exhausted the question? Can we find a proposer for item recommendation 3 and 4? Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation on 4 and 5. Thank you very much.
Sorry? And Councillor Wakeman has seconded it. Does anybody want to speak upon this? Or have we exhausted everything? Okay, then I will go to the vote. It has been proposed and seconded of recommendation 3 and 4. All in favour, please raise hands. Oh, sorry, 4 and 5, beg your pardon. I've got it, my numbers mixed up. 4 and 5. 4 and 5 we are definitely voting on. Against? Abstentions? Okay, that is carried. Now we move on to, find my numbers now, 6 and 7. If you like to. I'm going to ask James to put clarity onto this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It might help to shorten debate given the time that we're at if I just quickly go through the government's proposals. As Paul's alluded to, I was involved in the development of these, and I am conscious of the comments that have been made already, so I'll address those principally. But I think the thing to bear in mind with this is that we're trying to do something here that's never been done before, in terms of trying to bring together councils to work together in this way, at this kind of structure, in a governance sense, beyond your traditional joint service committees or something like that. This is something quite different because there are no functions or responsibilities to put into that pot. No authority is presently being asked to give up any function to be delivered by another authority under the auspices of a joint committee. And the other comment I'd make at the outset is that this is just the beginning. If this actually evolves in the way that you've been discussing and Paul set out, the Joint Committee won't be the only democratic body. The point's been made about the absence of scrutiny, the ability for other members to actually get involved in the work of this Joint Committee or Vision Derbyshire. If you look at the appendices to the report in terms of governance and the various ways in which the Joint Committee might commission work or undertake work, there's various touch points for decisions to come back to this council, in the case of Derbyshire Dales, for you to make those decisions. Where the Joint Committee takes a decision, that a decision record will be published, and when we establish a scrutiny committee here, or until the point that we establish a scrutiny committee, you could refer that to this council for discussion and you can put that challenge down. So one of the key considerations was not to establish another layer of bureaucracy has been referred to, but actually to minimise the bureaucracy at this point to enable that joint working to occur, but for scrutiny to occur within individual councils. Now that might need to change as it evolves, and we're only at the outset of this conversation at the minute, but this isn't a final set of governance proposals. It will evolve as joint committees have evolved over time that number of members here have been involved in. The way it's been set out is to ensure that you have input. So the point's been made about there'll be one member appointed to the joint committee who will represent this council on that joint committee. But actually the key thing is the touch points where you have to come back from the joint committee for this council to ratify decisions that are being made by that joint committee or to scrutinise it. So it isn't just setting something up that will run off and not be subject to any kind of challenge or anything like that. It is there. It could be clearer. I think that and I take the point that's been made by several members that could have been clearer in this report. But the way in which it's been drafted is with the intention of individual councils still having the ability to hold decision makers on that joint committee to account. So I just wanted to make that point clear. Those are probably the only points I would make because I am conscious of time, Chair. So if members want to ask questions, I'll try to answer.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I went through these and the articles and the procedural rules and the process diagrams in some detail, and I've got some very detailed questions about each one of them, so I'd be very grateful if you could bear with me because I got a page and a half of questions.
Page and a half?
Yes.
I don't know.
I think it's important that we go through them.
I would like these questions to be pertinent and straightforward.
They are
Thank
pertinent.
you.
They are pertinent and straightforward.
Thank you.
Hughes, if he submitted any of these questions beforehand so that the officer could be prepared, as we have advised and asked people to do on a number of occasions.
I think at this point the questions need to be voiced in open debate because the
before.
Chair, could I just...
No, there isn't. The point of order of these questions, we will continue with your questions. If I feel they are moving in the wrong direction, then I will be...
a lot of it is just referring to paragraphs.
Right.
So the first question is about pages 111 to 113. This is a series of process diagrams are given on page 111 to 113. I couldn't find any reference to these in the articles of the procedural rules. Is there such a reference that I've missed? And if there isn't such a reference, what is the status of these diagrams?
To respond to that question, Councillor Hughes, these are simply to set out the way in which the joint committee might work, because as I've referred to, it doesn't have any functions, it doesn't have any responsibilities like we have statutory functions in law given to us. So in establishing the joint committee, and you look at the work streams that are in that document, to do that, they're going to need to follow some of these processes. So what this does is set out the types of things that the joint committee might want to try and do, and the decision-making process that would be followed. The procedure rules wouldn't set out a decision-making process in that level of detail. This is to try and help members, officers, the public to understand the types of things that might play out.
To be honest, Chair, I would have expected those diagrams to be referenced in the articles or in the procedural rules, because otherwise they're just hanging and they don't have any particular context. The articles, I think, set out the functions and responsibilities and of the joint committee. Therefore, the articles specify that the joint committee does have functions, does have responsibilities. So I turn therefore to those responsibilities and those functions. The Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee article, and this is concerning governance, the Vision Derbyshire Joint Committee articles are provided starting on page 82. Article 2 specifies the functions and responsibilities of the Joint Committee in the delivery of local authority functions and states what the joint committee is responsible for. Paragraph 2.2 and 2.3 specify the scope and the responsibilities of the joint committee.
Okay, let's just, I'm just going to move back to James and then make some formal point here.
Okay, so in terms of 2.2 and 2.3, I'll go back to that point around this is something different. These are not traditional, this isn't licensing functions that you find in the functions and responsibilities regs. These are very broad generic terms that actually talk about the aspirations of what this committee will do. These are draft at the moment. They won't be approved until every single council adopts them. So these don't exist at the moment. You're being asked to consider them. But what's set out in 2.2 and 2.3 are suggested things that actually a joint committee could determine to do if this council and the other participating councils determine that it should do. But there are no specific functions, so there's no reference to licensing, there's no reference to legal, there's no reference to finance. Sorry, I'm picking on colleagues who are just in front of me. But that gives you the kind of flavour, whereas if you look in our constitution, in terms of functions and responsibilities, it is extremely specific in the scheme of delegation for committees and for officers. So it's not, this is something very different to what you would normally expect. And that's because no decisions have actually been made around what this joint committee will do. There's not been any conversation specifically around authorities agreeing to put those functions into the pot. This is the vehicle to get to the point where you start to put functions into the pot.
Okay. In terms of law, there's lots of law which sets up organisations and has have very broad statements of functions and responsibilities. And I took this to be such a statement. The articles state in general terms what this joint committee would do. And it provides collective leadership for Derbyshire, progresses shared ambitions for the area, works together, etc., etc. Those are what its ambitions. And what within those broad definitions, the joint committee will, this is pretty definite, determine the programme of works, monitor and review performance, commission strategic outline and business cases, approve annual business plans, provide a platform for the devolution of powers, determine the requests from individual authorities to work collaboratively, provide a forum for councils and their representatives, delegate functions. These are the things that it does. This is meat. This is good. This is firm proposals, and I can see how it would work. That's fine. But my question is, whereas paragraph 2.4 specifies that the joint committee may delegate functions to local specific authorities, that is, district or county council, the articles do not appear to consider the relationship between county and district council and the joint committee. There appears to be no means of approving or rejecting any joint committee initiative. And just to reference, the articles do in fact refer to the councils that will form the Vision Derbyshire. Under the articles, district and county council powers are limited to make requests to work collaboratively.
Councillor Hughes, can you just
the
question and you've put it.
So the point is that it refers to local authorities, the constituent authorities in some cases, but in no place does it say what power is vested in the constituent authorities and what power is vested in the joint committee. So it's not possible for us to understand from what is in front of us where our responsibilities end and the joint committee starts. And there's nothing in the articles which say that all decisions are in fact made by the constituent local authorities having been proposed by the joint committee or anything along those lines.
Chair, if I can just respond to that. So this council would have to delegate those functions to the joint committee. It would take an active decision here, or not here, but by this council to do that. So that committee, that joint committee, will not do anything without you giving it the authority to do it, because at the moment, you have the authority to do it. The joint committee doesn't have the authority to do it until you give it the authority. We're establishing a framework with these articles for it to make decisions where we determine, or you determine, to delegate those functions to it. but you will consider on a case-by-case basis each of the functions or things that you want that joint committee to do. This isn't about creating a big overarching body that has no contact. This is actually about ensuring that the participating authorities, I think we term it as in here at the moment, actually have control over what this joint committee does. So it is your decision as a council what goes in, what doesn't go in, and then you monitor that and you keep bringing it back at the various points in the decision process, because you haven't given full authority for it to do the real decision making. If you look at these functions, it's commissioning business cases. A decision will still need to be made. That's not a decision to do something. That decision will still come back to each individual authority for that decision to be made.
The European Union, right down to our own ICT committee, decisions made at one level have to be agreed at a local level.
Yes,
and there's nothing in these terms of reference, in these articles, which suggest that will take place. They're completely open-ended on it.
Right.
Can I come to a third question?
No, I can't. I'm sorry.
Can I come to a third question? Access to information.
Excuse me, everybody. Thank you. Right, Councillor Hughes.
I have a third
They are
question.
obviously all as regards this, and I think it's been already pointed out that this is just draft at the moment. There isn't even a committee for this. And you have been said that once this committee set up, then these rulings and these governances and procedural rules will be coming back to us to put together. So
Chair,
I don't want to keep going to every particular one. So I am moving away from your questions.
So,
I'm
Chair,
sorry.
how can we vote on this if we don't know what we're voting for?
Excuse me?
How can we vote on recommendation
So you're
6?
telling me just because I let you ask the questions that the other members won't know what they're voting on?
No, I'm saying that if this is just a draft and there's nothing in here which commits us to anything, then what are we voting for in terms of recommendation 6?
The member is no longer heard.
Thank you. We won't have shouting.
Put to the vote now, please.
I've had an opportunity to ask a question. I've got a question.
We'll decide where we're going. I don't mind asking a question, but we are not going over this again. The point has been made from Councillor Hughes that he feels that what is in these governance and the rulings and the procedures don't seem to add up at the moment. But exactly. I've said at the time, there is not a committee for these to be running with. They are just there as a view. Vision Derbyshire. Please take this on board. We haven't got to this group. We are just trying to move on to the next stage of making this group. So, Councillor Gamble, if you've got a sensible-ish question within this, without going over grounds that we've already done, I will take it.
The question doesn't go over old ground. It's a new question.
Say what?
Thank you. It's a hypothetical question.
I don't want a hypothetical. I want a straightforward question.
All right,
please.
straightforward question. Won't call it hypothetical. Straightforward question. We, as an organisation, get together, make a vote and say that this is how we want our representative, when they go to Vision Derbyshire, to vote on a particular issue. What impels that representative to vote the way we want? Once they get to Vision Derbyshire, will they be allowed to vote just as an individual, as part of that committee, or will they be impelled to actually make the decision that we want them to make?
I think that's already been paid point clear to you.
No, it
but
hasn't.
I will bring in Councillor Mr.
That's a very deep and interesting question, but I'll try to be brief in response. You can't compel a member in terms of how they're going to vote, because that's predetermination. But what you can do is give a view, and that member may choose to give that view. So if council votes one way, and the point's being made that it's considered likely that the leader of the council would be appointed to serve on this committee, not that that's guaranteed at this stage, but it'd be highly unlikely for the leader of the council who would then go to a committee and then disregard the views of the council, particularly if the leader comes from a majority group that would have carried the vote in the council meeting. So I think it's unlikely, but you can't bind a member in terms of how they vote. That would be predetermination.
So how important... Oh sorry, ma'am.
So how important do you think that makes decisions that are made at this authority in that situation? And can I ask another, sorry, I've got another question. Once we vote this through, and once every other authority votes this through, presumably then we have all signed up to this and therefore it does exist. We are just the first stage, are we not the first stage of voting this through? It will be a concrete proposition, am I correct, when the other authorities vote it through?
Yeah, you're being asked to approve the establishment of a joint committee. It is draft until everybody's approved it, but once everybody's voted on it, or those members who determine that they wish to participate have approved the proposals, then it will exist.
So do you agree we should make our vote on the basis that this is a situation and a joint committee that will exist?
You should vote on the basis of the recommendation, which is to establish a joint committee. It will exist.
Thank you.
Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm asking a completely different question, actually. I want to ask Paul Wilson and James McLaughlin if they are confident that if we vote for these recommendations tonight and other councils throughout Derbyshire endorse these similar recommendations, whether the Secretary of State is likely to approve this arrangement for Derbyshire, Vision Derbyshire, bearing in mind that the government seems very keen at the moment and has been in the recent past in approving or cajoling, in fact, local authorities to join together to form unitary councils, which is, I don't think we really want to see a unitary council for the whole of Derbyshire, do we, in this room tonight? So are they confident that these proposals for Vision Derbyshire will be acceptable to the Secretary of State?
Yeah.
Chair, if I could respond to that particular question. That is certainly the hope. And prior to the what is now the deferred Levelling Up and Devolution white paper being published, all leaders, as I reported back in October, did actually write to the Secretary of State and say that Vision Derbyshire was their preferred option, and that's the decision that this council made last October. It was our preferred option to collaborative working as opposed to local government reorganisation and the threat of one or more unitary councils to cover the county of Derbyshire. So that is what we're working to. If Vision Derbyshire doesn't proceed, then I don't think anybody could say that that threat of unitarisation would go away, because I don't believe it would.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. It was a very good question. In fact, I've been on two separate...
Excuse me, Councillor Purdy. Are you going to ask a question?
I'm answering the question, yeah. No, I'm answering Councillor Bedford. He said would both. Was that right? Thought I heard you say both, inferring me.
He said before we vote.
No.
Sorry, Councillor Purdy.
I'm trying to give Councillor Barefoot...
I think at the moment we've got the gist of it. So I'm going to move to a proposal and then you can go into debate and then I will bring you in if you... So can I have a proposer for... Oh, you want to ask a question? Councillor O'Brien, ask a question, thank you.
Yeah, three questions. The paper refers to the host authority. Can you tell me if it will be the responsibility of this joint committee to determine who is the host authority? And if not, where will that decision be taken?
Excuse me, Councillor O'Brien, could you actually take the mic because your question wasn't picked up properly down this end? Thank you.
Sorry about that. The paper refers to the host authority. Can you tell me if it will be the responsibility of this joint committee to determine who is the host authority, and if not, where that decision will be taken and by whom? My second question, I'm not sure who will answer this, is do you think it appropriate that, as this is a joint committee, a simple majority is required to pass a proposal, or do you think in the circumstances a different arrangement is appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
James.
Thanks, Councillor O'Brien. So I'll take the second question first in terms of the simple majority. I think there's case law now that says arrangements that require anything more than 50% plus one is challengeable. So to establish an arrangement where 2/3 of members or something like that would result in a challenge almost certainly that would probably fall. So I don't think we should do that. Your first question around the host authority, normally when these things are set up, those decisions are made before they're set up. And I think that's probably a conversation that's required between the leaders and the chief executives. And it'll probably depend on the resources of an individual authority as to whether they can administer it. You look around you this evening, you know, it's taken quite a bit of work from my team to get this meeting set up tonight. Whoever takes it on is going to have to do similar work to administer the joint committee. So a decision will be needed.
Where will that decision be taken and by whom?
So that decision is probably going to have to be made by the people who control the purse strings and the individual authorities who are going to participate. It wouldn't be at the joint committee because you wouldn't normally. You need a host authority to administer the joint committee from the moment it's set up. So that decision needs to be made before the joint committee exists. So at some point there'll probably be a discussion amongst the leaders and the chief executives as to who will take a lead, and then I would imagine it'll be established as a shadow host or something like that, and then when the joint committee is established there can be a formal resolution to confirm the host authority. A bit convoluted, but it gets there in the end.
Okay. Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've probably come to the point where we need to move the recommendation. We've had quite a lot of clarity about how a joint committee might work, how it gets its authority, and how it will operate at this point in time. And I think we need the joint committee to make sure that the Vision Derbyshire delivers what we want it to do, supply its governance, and importantly, to make sure Derbyshire Dales has, you know, a proper role on the authority, and therefore, on the Vision Derbyshire, and therefore, I'm happy to move recommendation 6 and 7.
Thank you. Does I find a seconder? Councillor Donnelly. Okay. I would go back to Councillor Purdy. You were quite welcome to put a point over if you wish now on the debate side.
No, the moment's passed, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Nobody else wishes to make a speech, then it has been proposed and seconded. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you. Thank you. Not much of a speech. I wouldn't like to call it a speech, but I just want to make a couple of comments. We're sort of talking about these are going to be what this Vision Derbyshire oversees as being separate matters. But looking at the priorities, and I do see things that currently this authority does take on for itself at the minute, like homelessness, independent living, domestic abuse, climate change, planning policies. You know, if we're going to potentially end up with an organisation that makes planning policies that this authority will be bound by, social mobility, these are all these are policy areas. These aren't just something, you know, some vague things and ways of working. These are policy areas. So I do think, you know, I know this has taken a lot of time tonight, but I think we do need to think very carefully about how we actually share policy areas, because there might be other authorities that don't have the policy priorities that we have.
Councillor Salt.
Thank you, Chair. It is a big decision, and it's also a big opportunity. You've heard what the alternative might be in terms of unity authority, so we're trying to do something that will prevent that. I don't think anybody in the room wants it. This is the opportunity. We've talked about it for long enough. It's time to stump up some money and stump up a way forward and say yes to it, and I fully support it. I don't accept what's been said about the stifling of democracy. I think the committee is set out, as you would imagine that committee to be, and I don't think anybody could stifle Councillor Hughes if they tried. And by the way, I certainly wasn't trying to stifle you asking your questions in the council. I just wondered if you might write them in so they were a bit more focused, perhaps. So apologies if you thought that. But I fully support it. It's an opportunity which we need to take, and we need to take now. I understand that there are some reservations around the money and moving forward with it, but I think it is sort of a now or never opportunity which this council need to take quickly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, again, it has been moved and seconded. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I'd just like to apologise if I raise my voice, Councillor Aitken objected
Thank
to
you,
that.
both of you, for making those points in public, and I think it is noted. It is a very complex thing, and yeah, it can get very heated. I am definitely now going to the vote. It's been proposed and seconded for item recommendation 6 and 7. Please go to the vote. All for? Against? Abstentions? That is carried. Item 8 and 9. No, not 8 and item. Recommendation 8 and 9. Looking for a nomination for a member to act for the council. I'll move to Councillor Hobson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Purdy to be our representative. He's got the experience as a councillor. He's also been at the Vision Derbyshire table right from the very beginning with Paul Wilson. He's got the experience, intelligence and integrity to ask the searching and challenging questions that all this council need the answers for, and I have total faith in him. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ack.
Yes, thank you very much. Chair, I'm quite happy to second the recommendations with Councillor Hobson. I know Councillor Purdy's been heavily involved in Vision Derbyshire from the onset, and he's the best man to lead this authority going forward. So with that, I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to make any more comments upon that? With that, it's been proposed and seconded. I'd like to go to the vote for item 8 and 9. All in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried, thank you. With that, I am closing the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance. And please note, all members, that unfortunately, due to the fact that we haven't gone through any more of these items, we've got another meeting which we wouldn't have usually have had. Thank you.